Topuria could knock out Bud Crawford on first contact. Now, I'm somewhat into the theme. I'm somewhat into it just because it won't go away. And is there any truth to it? Why is it always the MMA guys got to go box, by the way? It's the same with the jiu-jitsu guy. The jiu-jitsu guy will welcome anybody, as long as he doesn't do jiu-jitsu. But it never goes the other way. You don't get the great black belt to come and do the wrestling match, and you don't get the boxer to come over and do an MMA match. And I don't begrudge that. It doesn't sell. It doesn't work. When I say it never happens, that's not literal. James Toney came over, and the UFC lost a whole bunch of money with him. Francis Ngannou went to Tyson Fury, which, by the way, is the most incredible sporting spectacle that I have ever seen. It's not what I expected. But that's also why it didn't make any money. It lost a small fortune. Nobody expected that Francis could do so well. So it's not like we haven't seen these things, but it's a very tough draw. And why is it that way? If Ilia Topuria really could beat up Terence Crawford, why didn't he go into boxing? Ilia Topuria's story is a great story, and it actually didn't start with boxing. I've heard many people tell the story that way. That's inaccurate. Ilia Topuria's very first days of training in combat was in Greco-Roman wrestling. Not just wrestling, Greco-Roman specifically, and he was 14 years old. He then got over into boxing very quickly. You'll hear that story told the other way around. I'm right. His first days of combat were in Greco-Roman wrestling. But once you find boxing, and once you discover boxing, right, it's very hard to get a boxing match. You don't know of any. Can you imagine that? You don't know of any. What a statement I'm making to you. And I'm making it to all of you. You don't know of a boxing event. If your son or your nephew or yourself wanted to go box, you don't know of a single event to put them in. You came and you wrap their hands, you say, give me a one, and you give me a one, and you say, give me a cross. You could not say, all right, great, you're up 3 weeks down at the pavilion. You don't even know of a boxing event. If you found out about a boxing event, you don't know how to enter. You don't even know what USAB is. You don't even know where USAB is located. You didn't even know that you had to have a card with USAB to be able to enter down at the pavilion in the makeshift boxing event that I just made up because it doesn't exist. So it's an interesting thing when I say, why did Ilia not pursue it? Maybe I can answer my own question because it's not real. There's nowhere to box. Now, I love boxing, and I would love to be a person that helped to change that. But it doesn't make my statement any less true. If we're trying to guess, and that's all we can do, but if we're trying to guess why Ilia Topuria, who started with Greco-Roman wrestling and then found boxing, did not pursue boxing, if we were to guess, maybe because boxing isn't real. There's nowhere to go box. And it's not wholly different from MMA. It's not as though as if your son or your nephew or you yourself decides you want to get into MMA. You also don't know where to do that. You don't know where to sign up. You don't know what requirements you would need or what equipment that you could need. I mean, these things can be researched and these things can be found out, but I'm only sharing for you if once upon a time and we had to trace Ilia back to his youth, if he could really knock out Terence Crawford on first contact, he left the Olympic Games on the table. MMA is not contested. That is a tremendous dream with athletes everywhere, but particularly European athletes. Left it on the table, scratched, could never be pursued. College scholarship, MMA, not done anywhere, cannot be pursued. So if he could actually knock out Terence Crawford on first contact, why did he choose MMA? And I'm only asking the question, like, it's not a completely ridiculous concept. Not after we saw Francis Ngannou, who had never boxed before, go a half hour with Tyson Fury. And one licensed judge said Tyson Fury should have relinquished the belt that night. It was a split decision. A licensed judge said Francis Ngannou beat him. Conor McGregor, who had never done it before, fought Floyd Mayweather for 30 minutes. I mean, it's not as though that this is just some silly concept. What Anthony Joshua did to Francis is what should have happened. But that's what Floyd should have done to Conor, and it's what Tyson should have done to Francis. But we find out that it doesn't happen. So why would we count out Ilia Topuria? On the other hand, why didn't he do it? Why didn't he just pursue it? One thing that boxing has, while it lacks a competitive architecture, and while you can just go make the matches that you want to make, in the amateurs, that's not true. In the amateurs, it has a very scheduled and very professional competitive architecture. It's not any different than tennis or swimming or golf. The Olympic Games, every event, every sport, boys and girls, is a straight line bracket. To make it onto an Olympic team, to go through the Olympic trials, is not about politics or who can draw or who can sell. Nobody goes out and watches it anyway. Somebody's going to get their ass kicked, which is largely why you need government funding. It's a complete loss, but it's a straight line bracket. There is a way for you on your skills and your skills alone to get recognition, which is not true in MMA. So why did Ilia choose MMA? And I'm only asking a question because I find these arguments to be annoying. And I stand with Ilia. Ilia is our champion. After seeing Conor, who could not make an amateur Olympic team, go 30 minutes with Floyd, after seeing Francis Ngannou, who could not get a medal at the amateur championships known as the Olympic Games, beat Tyson Fury, according to one of the judges, like, I'll stand with Ilia. I just don't know why we're here. I don't understand why we're here. And how come it doesn't go the other way? And how come, if it's true, you didn't do it? Say whatever you want about Francis. Francis walked away from an active contract to pursue a dream that he believed to be true. I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. But everybody else seems to just talk about talking and meet about meeting. And if it were true, if it was ever true, if it's true now or it was true then, if it's true today or if it was true when you were kids, why didn't you do it?